Ahoy hoy, I'm Planewalk, and for the longest time it seems as though flat earthers have believed that the Truman Show is some kind of flat earth documentary. Now, I've thought about this, and I've come to the conclusion that there is something that flat earthers have completely missed about it. Now, before I mention what flat earthers have completely missed about the Truman Show, make sure you leave your comments letting me know what you think flat earthers have completely missed. But let's familiarise ourselves with why flat earthers think that the Truman Show is some kind of flat earth documentary.
If you've ever seen the Truman Show, you can see how it's a lot like waking up to this fake reality that we find ourselves living in. News stories are completely fabricated and are crafted to instill fear into the population and divide the people along with religion and politics.
Well, I'd actually say that news stories are more about getting clicks and views than anything else, because that way they can show more adverts, which makes them more money.
The education system is a brainwashing machine in place to teach slaves how to function with a shitty job in a society that's crumbling by design.
So there's a few things to unpack here. The first being that, yes, in some instances, the education system is quite outdated, because the jobs that we need to teach people for do not exist today. For example, when I went to high school, augmented reality wasn't really a thing until the last couple of years. So how do you teach people how to utilize or even use a technology that hasn't been invented yet? The answer is, of course, you don't just teach someone what to do. You teach them why they're doing it. You can tell someone that 5 times 5 equals 25, and they'll memorize that 5 times 5 equals 25, but why does that equal 25? Why not 35? Well, to anyone that has graduated primary school, they'll know that 5 times 5 is 5 lots of 5. It's also the same as saying 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5 plus 5, and that is 25. Now, the second thing is, just because the way that something is taught in school is outdated, that doesn't mean that it's useless. Maths was one of those subjects that I feel like could have been taught a whole lot better. I don't think I was ever taught why anything to the power of 0 is 1. Of course I know why these days, but I don't think I was ever taught that in school. However, I do remember learning about gradients immediately after a programming competition in which one of the problems in that competition concerned gradients. So that was fun.
The allopathic medical system harms people instead of healing them or teaching them how to heal.
Most of the time in places that aren't America, medicine works really well, and the only reason why I single out America is because of the opioid crisis. Can you imagine trying to tell someone with type 1 diabetes that they don't need insulin and that they should let their body heal on their own? Not going to happen. They need insulin.
The food isn't real. The drinks aren't real.
So I'm assuming that he's talking about artificial flavors here, because food is definitely real. I've held it in my hands. But even then, supermarkets still stock fresh fruit and vegetables. They haven't gone away.
The movie, music, fashion, and adult film industries are all highly responsible for fueling this toxic environment that's constantly degrading around us.
So to be able to respond to what he just said, I'd need to know exactly what he's talking about, because that is very vague and could mean a number of different things.
When one begins to see all this and awaken from a lifetime of deception, it's very much reminiscent of the character Truman of The Truman Show, a 1998 film starring Jim Carrey, or JC, as Truman Burbank, the unwitting superstar of the world's most popular television program that runs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Truman was adopted by a corporation as a baby in order to televise his life and make the show possible. To help keep Truman from learning the truth, they kill off the character that plays his father in a boating accident while Truman is just a young boy. This makes him terrified of the water.
So is that why no flat earther has ever taken a boat trip to Antarctica? Because a traumatic event as a child made them fear the water? Or is it because they'd rather listen to someone on YouTube just tell them that they can't go to Antarctica?
Besides that, other fear-based propaganda is posted throughout the set, like this poster at the fake airline that says, "It could happen to you," and displays an airplane being struck by lightning.
It's funny that he brings that up, because quite often you'll have flat earthers talking about flights only going through the northern hemisphere. Then when you bring up flights like Santiago to Sydney, they'll say, oh, that flight doesn't actually exist. Now, there's nothing that stops them from trying to purchase that flight. They can do that, but they don't. Hell, there's not even a propaganda campaign to try and dissuade them from purchasing it. In fact, people like me would like them to try and purchase it.
There is a scene where Truman is making a phone call to try and track down a woman that he believes moved to Fiji. Right when he does this, a co-worker pops up and reveals a fresh newspaper where the headline reads, "The best place on Earth, Sea Haven, voted planet's top town," just before flashing a Masonic hand gesture.
I'm pretty sure that this hand gesture just means okay. I don't think that there's any hidden meaning there.
Signs and symbols rule the world, not words nor laws. A quote often attributed to Confucius, but whether he said it or not, it's absolutely true.
Yeah, I very much doubt that that's true. Unless we're talking about traffic signs, then it's at least plausible.
Anyway, another example of keeping Truman under mind control is when Truman is a boy in school. He expresses that he wants to be an explorer, but his teacher completely shuts him down.
"I'd like to be an explorer, like the great Magellan."
Oh, you're too late. There's really nothing left to explore.
But the thing is in life, teachers aren't trying to dissuade you from doing anything. If you say that you want to be a scientist and go to Antarctica, teachers won't try and dissuade you from doing that. In fact, they'll probably try and support you to achieve that goal.
So most of us have seen this movie. It's really good, and many people chop it up to being ahead of its time, basically because it foreshadowed reality TV and shows the ridiculous length some will go to exploit other humans for entertainment.
So reality TV did exist in the 90s. In fact, it was the late 90s when The Truman Show came out that reality TV became popular. So The Truman Show can easily be interpreted as a critique of reality shows, rather than a foreshadowing.
Pretty much everyone missed the bigger picture. This film is about you. It's about your life. You are Truman, the true man, or true woman, or simply change Truman Show to The Human Show. You have been closely monitored since the day you were born, and by now you have also been conditioned to be okay with that fact.
Well, the reasons for being monitored are very different. In The Truman Show, it's about entertainment. But in real life, if someone puts up a CCTV camera, it's usually to protect their business. When it comes to Google and Facebook, that's generally advertising, although Google does some interesting things, like it will tell you whether a place is busy or quiet, and I think that's based on people's location data. And when it comes to intelligence agencies, they say they're trying to stop hackers and terrorists, but we all know that they're really just looking at your nudes, aren't they? Now that doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, but it is very different to The Truman Show. But one of the biggest differences is we know we're being tracked. Truman didn't. That's a very big difference if you ask me.
You go through their schooling and you're taught only what they want you to know. With this amazing knowledge, you become a paycheck-earning member of the workforce and begin making make-believe money so you can feed it back into the system, creating a perpetual cycle where you are always enslaved by the debts you owe.
But the thing is, people do need to work. Sure, not every job is necessary, but you need farmers. If there's no farmers, then there's no food. And yeah, there are some bullshit jobs. The system is by no means perfect, but that doesn't mean that every job is useless or the system is completely broken. There are some things that do work. There are jobs that are vital. When it comes down to it, it's more about finding solutions to these problems rather than complaining, because complaining can only get you so far. Solutions actually fix the problem.
It's a trap, and you can't get out of it. Meanwhile, you're being kept in the dark about where you live. Just like Truman, or the true man, lives underneath a dome, you too live underneath a dome, a much larger one compared to the movie.
Except there's no evidence for the dome that you're proposing, so why should we believe it?
The dome you dwell in is a natural part of your cosmology. Since as far back as we know, all the cultures of the world have embraced living within this dome.
Well, saying that people used to think something is not good evidence. We used to think that arsenic would cure diseases. Turned out that it didn't work all that well.
The people from all regions of Earth knew what this place looked like and the nature of things within. It's not only the Bible that supports this information, but it certainly does.
Except that going by your diagram, there was one culture that thought they were on the back of elephants on the back of a turtle, and there was another that thought that we're in a magic giant treehouse. It's also not all that uncommon for different cultures to share similar myths and legends. Most cultures have myths and legends about a god or gods. Most cultures have myths or legends about floods. That does not make those myths and legends reality.
Everything up until the 1500s when the Jesuits began pushing heliocentrism. This isn't just some primitive idiocy where the ancients were too stupid to figure out that the earth was a spinning ball. They had it down packed. And it was the truth then, and it's the truth now.
Oh dear, another anti-Semitic flat earther. Who would have guessed that someone that associates with Eric Dubé would be anti-Semitic? But there's actually something very sneaky that he did there, because he said that around about the 1500s, we're going to use roundabout very loosely there, heliocentrism was pushed, which is kind of true. And if by pushed you mean that people accepted the evidence that Earth is going around the sun, then yeah, he's mostly right. However, heliocentrism wasn't the first time that someone decided, maybe Earth could be a globe. It was actually an idea way back in the 5th century BC. And when Earth was discovered to be a globe way back when, everyone just kind of went, yeah, that makes sense, and continued on with their life for the next 2,000 years. And then flat earthers showed up.
It's the reason why NASA had to pretend like they lost the technology to supposedly go back to the moon.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back again.
But it is a very difficult process to build old technology like that. And it would also be rather expensive to send humans to the moon. And you'd have to justify why you're sending humans, not robots, to the moon.
And why they always say that they can't leave low Earth orbit.
Right now, we only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can.
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to send humans into orbit around the Earth through the Van Allen radiation belts, because there's a lot of radiation there. You probably don't want to be doing that.
It's the reason that scientist Michio Kaku says things like this.
Usually in science, if we're off by a factor of 2 or a factor of 10, we call that horrible. We say something's wrong with the theory. We're off by a factor of 10. However, in cosmology, we're off by a factor of 10 to the 120. That is 1 with 120 zeros after it. This is the largest mismatch between theory and experiment in the history of science.
Can you imagine a flat earther trying to explain what exactly he's talking about there and how flat earth fixes that? Any flat earthers watching this, try and explain that. I'd really be interested to hear what you have to say about it.
One day, Truman is walking outside to go to work, and a stage light that serves as a fake star falls from the mini-dome that he lives in. The light is labeled Sirius 9 Canis Major. Do a search for metal balls fall from the sky, and what you find is very similar to what we see here in this scene from the Truman Show. Seems to be happening all over the place. Are these metal spheres actually fake stars in our night sky, or are they something else?
Did he really just say that there could be fake stars in the night sky? That is stupid, even for flat earthers. By the way, if you want to know what those orbs are, they are just satellites that have re-entered Earth's atmosphere.
Another thing worth researching is the NASA patent for an artificial sun. This is from the 50s or 60s. Pretty scary because it's probably already in use. I mean, is this whole world really that fake?
So what ODD TV means by researching is look it up, see that it exists, and go, ah yes, ODD TV was right about this, and not actually read what it says, because I read what it says. The stated purpose was actually to test things like satellites, but my question is, why would NASA need to build an artificial sun? I mean, I'm pretty sure the Dark Ages didn't mean that there was no sun, right? Was there no sun until 1960 something? And then NASA just put an artificial sun in there. I was like, yes, this has always been there. This is why Flat Earth gets so ridiculous at times. I mean, it's always ridiculous, but this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen when it comes to Flat Earthers.
It reminds me of that scene from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy where Arthur and Slarta Bartfast are riding the lift and seeing how planets are created. Of course, I feel it necessary to mention that Earth is not a planet, because planets are actually a particular kind of star. But this movie holds the same deception that we are taught in schools, of course.
I'd like to know how he explains the fact that we've seen moons orbiting planets, much like the moon orbits Earth, which is a planet.
The idea here is that what if everything is artificially made? Here's a guy painting the rocks, a guy filling up the ocean. Ridiculous sounding, yeah, and I don't want to believe that, but it makes things much more like the Truman Show if that is the case.
So he's saying that if reality has all these things that are fake, then it would be more like the Truman Show. Well, yeah, if reality is more like the Truman Show, then it's going to be more like the Truman Show. Well done, Einstein! It'd be like me saying that if warp drives existed in real life, then real life would be closer to Star Trek. Because, yeah, if a thing that exists in Star Trek also exists in real life, then real life is closer to Star Trek, isn't it?
Regardless if the sun is fake or not, or if there is a fake sun up there somewhere, we know that the sun is local, as depicted in the ancient cosmologies. It's here within the dome. You can trace the rays of the sun to its source to see that it's close. If it was 93 million miles away, you wouldn't be able to do this.
And if the sun was just above the clouds, like your diagram seems to propose, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Anyway, the Truman Show is very telling, and it's funny how the logo for the Truman Show has the NASA blue marble in it. Gives away the fact that the false spinning globe model is merely a prison for your mind.
Or it could be in there for a different reason. There are other logos with globes in it, like the Firefox logo has a globe in it.
There's a deleted scene from the Truman Show that is of great interest for Flat Earth, and I'll roll it right now.
Personally, I think the unconquered south face is the only one worth scaling. It's a 20,000-foot sheer wall of ice, but that's never stopped me before. Risk? Of course I'm aware of the risks. Thank you for your concern.
Don't you find it strange that in this movie that already contains major in-your-face symbolism for Flat Earth, that they even considered doing a scene like that, talking about ice walls?
Well, just because they considered doing a scene like that doesn't mean that there's an actual ice wall. It's a movie. It's not real.
In the most accepted Flat Earth model, Antarctica is not a continent like it is on the bottom of the false globe model, but it's a massive ring of ice that holds everything we know of within. These walls are nearly 200 feet high, and when you do your research, are more plausible than you first think. Admiral Richard E. Byrd completed many missions to do with Antarctica. Some of them included names like Operation High Jump or Operation Deep Freeze. High Jump because the walls are huge and it would have been quite the task to get up there.
Or maybe it was called that because one of the central goals of the operation was the aerial mapping of Antarctica. You know, just a wild thought that I'd throw out there.
Seriously, if you currently believe that you live on a tilted, wobbling, and spinning ball that's flying through outer space at over 500,000 miles per hour, then you gotta learn that this world is not what you think it is.
Well, I'd say that if you believe that the Truman Show is an accurate reflection of how we're all being lied to about the shape of the Earth, then there is something that you missed about it. In the Truman Show, everybody except for Truman was in on it. Seriously, everybody was in on it. They needed everybody to be in on it to maintain the illusion. Do you think that everybody that you know is trying to hide the shape of the Earth from you? And it's also worth pointing out that there were so many people in on it that some of them tried to reveal the truth to him. That hasn't really happened in real life, has it? So how can we relate the Truman Show to Flat Earth? Well, you'd need heaps of people to be in on that kind of conspiracy. But that's the lesson for this video, so we've reached the end. Make sure you leave a like and subscribe if you like this video, and be sure to ring the bell so that you actually get notified of when I post new videos. As always, a big shout out to my $20 or more patrons. What Jesus, Hugh Jarsz, M.C.Nutkin, Jane Spade, Wolfie, Morrie, Graymore Ghost, KidVicious, and Sacha Campbell. If you want to support me financially, you can do so on Patreon. There should be a link there. But anyway, I will see you in the next video. Between you and me, thank you for watching. I should also mention that I also found another video while searching for a decent video to respond to about the Truman Show. And the other one that I found didn't have much about the Truman Show, but it was still interesting, so I might end up responding to that one as well.